I recall, as a youngster in the 40s, before you would get to the 50s, going to Broadway shows, and you'd see a movie, two movies actually, a full-length feature, like a 45-minute short film, the news, a cartoon, and then the stage would rise, and there'd be a big band playing, and it might be maybe not Sinatra, but Harry James or Tommy Dorsey or Duke Ellington or Count Basie. So, and there was one theater after another. And large theaters just like that in the boroughs, in Brooklyn and also in the Bronx. You got an opportunity to hear a lot of great music live. So that's what was happening. In the 40s and the 50s, it was pretty much, the big band era was coming to an end, and so was the Broadway stage. And small clubs, as you're talking about, were really flourishing. And I was going to Birdland. Even when I started playing there, let's talk about, say, 57. I think it was just like $1.25. There'd be two bands playing. You could go hear Miles Davis and Horace Silver, $1.25, and you sit in what they call the grandstand, because the bar was on the left, and there were these like wooden plank seats, and you just sit there, and you could just sit there all night and just have a couple of beers and hear all this great music, and they'd be there for 2-3 weeks at a clip. And there was, so many jazz clubs, especially on 52nd Street, downtown in the Village. And I think about that particular era as like a black and white film, and it slowly went to, we went to CinemaScope and color films, the big blockbusters. And what we're doing now is just like, tonight we're in one city, tomorrow I'm in San Francisco playing. The following night I'll be in Santa Cruz. So there's not that same continuity that there was back then. When I was playing in the late 50s, 60s, 3 weeks in New York, 2 weeks in Philly, 2 weeks in Washington, go down to Atlanta, play for a week, go to Miami, play for 2 weeks, on and on, just go around the country. It was really a different life, totally different lifestyle. What happened in my case, my decision to become a sideman, because I made a record in 61, 62, I had won the Downbeat New Star Critics Poll, and had got a record deal, put out my first album, I did some traveling, and then my first child was born, one of 8, that is. And I decided that I wanted to remain in New York as much as possible, and very quickly and luckily got involved, from my point of view, in the session scene in New York City, which was, for me, was incredibly vibrant. There was so much music happening in studios, and I liked the idea of, when I was playing on a film date, even if it was a TV commercials, I'd be sitting next to J.J. Johnson and Thad Jones, and Mel Lewis would be at the drums. And it'd be like sessions all day and playing with my, West Montgomery record at night, and then doing the same thing like 6 days or 7 days a week sometimes. If you were on the A list, even if you were on the B list, you were pretty busy. So it gave me a chance to be home, as I was having a child almost every 2 years then, and also get involved in the budding jazz rock scene that was happening in the 60s when I was with Jeremy Steig and the Satyrs, which led me to move to Woodstock. We could talk about that, but that's a whole community, wonderful community in itself of artists, musicians. Weather Report was, they were huge, a huge success. They sold millions of records. Steps was really fairly unknown in the United States. After we made Smokin' in the Pit, we had made 3 albums in Japan. They were not released in the United States. we were hugely popular. We were playing to like 4,000, 5,000 people in Japan. But in the States, we were playing like a couple of clubs. I remember one time we just finished a tour in Japan and we played a gig in Hawaii at a jazz club. We were going to work our way across the country. And I remember, I think there might have been 11 people in the audience. I had no idea who we were. It was really discouraging at that point. So even the critics were, not that they loved Weather Report either. It was, but they considered us a electric fusion band, and we weren't. It was an acoustic, basically an acoustic band to begin with, as you well know. Eddie Gomez, Steve Gatter, Peter Erskine, Michael, myself, and Don Grolnick on piano, or Ileana Elias. It was an acoustic band for at least 7-8 years. I mean, we knew each other from Birdland. He was playing with Cannonball, I was playing with Buddy Rich. We knew each other, we respected each other. We would swap musicians along the way. I mean, Omar Hakim first played, and Victor Bailey first played with me, and he came down to the club and he heard them, and they went with him, and then, of course, Peter was with Weather Report, and so through the years, Joe and I, basically were, band leaders, 35, 40 years. It's a band only because I'll decide, okay, maybe it's time to do an electric tour. So I'll ask, hey, Steve Smith, the guys who played in that band, or Daryl Jones, or find an electric bass player, somebody who's going to play synthesizers and keyboards, and a saxophone player that I feel is going to work in that genre. And then we'll play some of the more electric, hard-hitting. But what's happened is sort of like cross-pollination, because we're doing some of the, we're doing Copeland tonight. I basically did that with Joe, on an album called American Diary. It was my album, with Joe Lovano, Eddie Gomez, Peter Erskine, and myself, a quartet, and it was totally, acoustic quartet. But I've played with the electric band. I've played with a big band now, so there's that cross-pollination. Last summer, I was out with, did a whole summer tour of all the festivals with Ileana Elias, who was one of the original pianists. And Peter Erskine was supposed to make it, but Peter injured his shoulder, and so I had Billy Kilson, who had played with me before, played drums, Mark Johnson on bass, Donnie McCaslin on a saxophone. And we just put it out there to an agent, and it filled up the summer. It was really quite nice to do that. Everybody loves to play pools. It's solo on that. They love the tune, they love Grolnick's writing. So there's never any complaints about, okay, we're going to play pools, or we're going to play something like Oops. And the audience kind of expects you to play at least a couple of pieces that they're familiar with. And then we introduce, Ileana will write a couple of new songs, or Mark did last year, Mark Johnson. Actually, I'm playing with Peter tomorrow in San Francisco, hopefully. I have to be there at 4 o'clock for a concert. I'm playing with Peter. Did I mention this already? Peter, Ileana, Mark Johnson, and Bob Shepard is playing saxophone. So Peter just sent me a tune, that we're going to play. So we're, introducing new pieces. A call that you got that you wish you could have, been around for, and you were doing something else, and I have no regrets about being a band leader when I was in my 20s. Say Gary or Burton or Bobby Hutcherson, I started Steps. It was really my group. It was called the Mike Mainieri Quintet. It wasn't called Steps. I happened to be, I don't know if I should tell the story, but I was signed to Warner Brothers. And then I had an offer to record in Japan with the Steps group. It wasn't the same band, it was a little bit of a different group. Bob Mintzer was in my electric band. Bob Mintzer, Omar, Hakim, Warren Bernhardt, and Marcus Miller. So I had that electric band, and I had the acoustic band with Gad and those guys. And so I had to give it a name so I wasn't sued by Warner Brothers. You didn't hear that. You know, I sort of became a band leader again around 76, 77. So I have no regrets because I had so much fun writing and performing with like various artists, pop artists. It did, you know, something like doing something with Paul Simon was always just as much fun for me, or writing a film score or something like that. It was just as challenging.